Hello, I'm Artwood, and I want to take you on a little journey around the musical venues of London in the 60s. And we'll be meeting a few people on the way, so if you stay with us, I think you'll enjoy it. From time to time, you'll be hearing me talking about my brothers, Ronnie and Ted. Ronnie being the most famous because he was in the Byrds, Jeff Beck, the Faces, the Rolling Stones. That is Ronnie Wood. Now Ted Wood, the jazz singer of the family, he was in the Temperance Seven. Yeah, this is the Pilum Bridge, and just that side where the boatyard, the slipway is, they used to have a chain ferry there in the 50s to bring all the jazz fans over. And when Arthur Chisnall took over to put rhythm and blues on, that was the changeover from trad jazz to R&B. Most of the R&B bands used to play in the interval to the famous jazz bands. And they used to have a little toll gate, two old ladies, and the people that used to go to the Ilpi Blues Club raised so much money in their few pence they paid, and it helped the local council to build a permanent footbridge over. So the music did some good for this island. So instead of the chain ferry taking a few people over at a time, they had this permanent walkway. And Arthur Chisnall used to take all the gear over on his little mini, just enough room to get his mini van over, with John Lord's Hammond organ on the top, and all the drum kit and the speakers and the guitars and everything on his little mini. It was really groaning under the weight. He used to take it over that bridge to save us lugging it over by hand. So we'll walk over the bridge and I'll take you down this little windy track to meet my mate Bruce, who is now a boat builder there, and he will show us the actual site of the old Ilpi Island Hotel. This is where the two old ladies used to sit collecting the money. That's where the chain ferry used to go. You could just about start hearing the music from this spot. Most of the bands played here. The Lexus Corner, Graham Bond, Georgie Fame, the Rolling Stones, you name it. But luckily the Artwoods had a residency here. And we played on, I think it was Thursdays for the whole duration of the island. And we built up a great following. That's why we held the record, even more than the Rolling Stones. So that's all right for us, isn't it? A little band. Then it got so popular in the end that people used to come from miles around, not just the people who knew about it in this area, but they used to travel for miles just to come here. It was so unique. It had a sprung floorboard, dance floor, and I think it was a 1920s hotel when it started off as a great big luxury hotel with a big ballroom and an orchestra and stage and everything. And then when it got pretty dilapidated, Arthur Chisnall saw that it was a great idea for a venue for
rock and roll and rhythm and blues. And he was right, because it attracted all walks of life. There was hippies, businessmen, young birds, dolly birds, normal blokes, and it was packed, and there was never any trouble. It was such a wonderful atmosphere. This is Eel Pie Island boatyard, and my friend Bruce is a boat builder. He's in the workshop at the moment, but if I get hold of him, he'll come round and tell you a bit about the history and everything. So, he's just coming down here. Brucey boy, can you just come down and have a few words with these people? Nice to see you again, my boy.
Art. How you doing, mate?
Not so bad, thanks.
Good to see you.
Could you tell them a bit about the history of this whole island?
The history of the island also involves a lot of musicians, Pete Townsend being one, who owns a floating recording studio. It's based on a Dutch barge called the Grand Cru, and she's been up this slipway a few times. One of the heaviest boats we ever get up here. But it's completely soundproof inside for recording purposes.
A floating recording studio?
Yep. And of course also further upstream there's another recording studio famous on the river. There's a houseboat called Astoria, and initially that was owned by Fred Carno years and years ago, the man that discovered Charlie Chaplin. It's now owned by Pink Floyd, or solely by, I think, out of Pink Floyd, Dave Gilmour.
Yeah.
And they made a monumental album called Momentary Lapse of Reason, and the first track on there, tied up with water because the whole album was made afloat, there's a single rowing scull, and they'd mounted equipment inside there, and you can hear water and oars in rowlocks as the boat's been pulled along. And that's just the first track. I can't remember the name of it, but monumental. And yeah, there's loads of history on this part. Of course, the other thing, probably one of the world's most famous bands, the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
They had
Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting bit. They were supposed to appear at Thames TV back in the 60s, of course, and they couldn't get them in the door because of street full of screaming women, girls, you know.
Yeah.
They went into Tufts Boatyard, put them in a tug, and smuggled them up the river into the back door, and that's the only way they could get them in.
Into the studios?
Into the studios, yeah.
For real. Now, I reckon you're going to take us through that little private door to show us where the original site of the Eel Pie Island Hotel was.
Yeah.
Okay, let's follow Bruce through this secret door. Frightened now. Yeah, it's such incredible the way it's changed. I don't even recognise a blade of grass even.
You wouldn't.
No, but berserk, isn't it?
Yeah.
But at least we're here.
Yeah. This is
On the original site, yeah. Loads of good memories here because it was such a fantastic club. It was unique. It was a 1920s, I think. Don't know the exact date, but they used to have. There was fountains each side of the stage in those days. You can still see the remains of it when we played there, and it was a huge. Orchestras used to be there, and it was a ballroom, and it was sprung floor. And people, when we were playing there, and then people started jumping up and down, it used to go like that. And when they put their bottles of Newcastle Brown or whatever they were drinking, or the glasses on the floor, when people started jumping up and down, at the end of the evening, the place was covered in broken glass. Not because of hooliganism, but because of just accident. All the glasses were banging against each other. And I always remember that. I thought, oh, all these people walking around in sandals and things on a ballroom of broken bottles and glasses. But nobody seemed to get injured. If they did, they didn't moan about it. But that's one of the memories. There was no, the toilet was right at the other end of the ballroom, and there was about 8 million people there, so you couldn't get to. So upstairs, the dressing room was above the stage, and if you had to go for a wee, you used to do it in a bottle, and sometimes if the bottle got knocked over, it used to drip through the floorboards of the dressing room above and drip on the band playing below. And that was not a very nice story, but it's true. I think, no, I can't mention any names, but I think Stones were one of the main problems with that wee episode. Right, this is the original station hotel where the Stones started in the Crawdaddy Club. But they became so popular, they had to change premises and move to the athletic ground, just down the road where we're going after this. It's the same building, but it's been revamped and had a facelift. But this is where it all started. Now, I promised we'd come to the athletic ground after they outgrew the station hotel. And this is the athletic ground. If you're wondering what that is, that's the pagoda in Kew Gardens, the Royal Botanic Gardens. But we're not here to talk about that. That is the clubhouse the Stones played in when they outgrew the station hotel. Lots of other bands, the Yardbirds appeared here. The Artwoods did it once. And the Beatles came down, 2 of the Beatles, to see the Rolling Stones play in that very building. They used to cram in there so much, it was so packed. There was probably a few people outside that couldn't get in, but then they started having festivals here in the summertime. And then Harold Pendleton, I think, had something to do with that, who went on to, from the Markey and here, he went on to be the promoter of the Reading Festival. They used to do about 2 one-hour sets in those days. Sometimes 2 1.5 hours, because they used to work us, these promoters, in those days. 3 hours a night. Now you're lucky to get 3/4 of an hour out of some of the bands. Well, here we are in Richmond Park, Henry VIII's great hunting ground. Also home of the Royal Ballet and Princess Alexandra.
One of the musicians who decided to live here in Richmond was my brother Ronnie. So let's see the hovel he decided to buy.
Well, this is the Wick where Ronnie brought the Wick from John Mills, the actor. And when Ronnie moved to America, it was passed down to Dick Leahy, a producer. And then later, it went into Pete Townsend. Now, Pete Townsend owns the Wick. Now, when Ronnie passes, sometimes he knocks on the door and says, "Hello, Pete." And Pete says, "Come in and have a look around your old house." So they're great little mates, and I'm glad it's gone to a good home. And as Ronnie said, it's like keeping it in the family, because it's a superb house. And it's got a wonderful view of the whole of the bend in the Thames. Right, that's the Jagger household. It's got quite a lot of scaffolding, been there for quite a few years now, so I don't know what's going on behind it, but when it's finished, I bet it'd be a lovely pad to have at the top of the hill.
We're going to the college where Ronnie received his excellent education that allowed him to buy his wonderful home. Incidentally, I pioneered the way for him too.
Now, this is Ealing College. It used to be the Ealing College of Art, but now it's changed to the Thames Valley University. And I used to sit here with Ronnie and Ted in the old days. This is the main entrance to Ealing College or Thames Valley University. And when I was here, there was quite a few art students that went on to form bands. Then I came here and formed a band. My brother Ted came here and formed a band. And then Ronnie came here and formed a band. So they're all copycats of me. But in those days, there were other people. In Ronnie's days, there were other people. Freddie Mercury, Pete Townsend, all those sort of people came on. And I had a hall named the Artwoods Hall, and Freddie Mercury only had a bar.
Now we're going to a place down the road that had a profound influence on the London blues scene.
Right, here I am, first time for hundreds of years, walking down these famous steps that lead us to this wonderful door that was the only entrance into the Ealing Club. And they used to queue around the block, just down this little narrow way to get into this beautiful club. The reason the Ealing Club was formed, because we used to play at Markey on Thursday evenings, and Alexis Corner and Cyril Davis said to me one day at rehearsals in Wardour Street above a pub, they said, it's getting so popular, you know, our band, we ought to get our own club. So I said, yeah. So he said, have you got any ideas of where we could have a club of our own without sharing it or sharing the bill or being right up in the West End? So I said, I know one club. It's a little drinking club called the Barbasque. And they have traditional jazz down there, but now it's called the Moist Hoist. And I know the manager, and he might let us have it on a Saturday night or a Friday night. It's negotiable. So he said, all right, where is it? So I said, it's in Ealing, opposite Ealing Broadway Station. And we were up in Wardour Street, so I had an aerial Humpmaster 650 twin motorbike with a double adult sidecar. And I bought Cyril Davis in the sidecar and Alexis Corner on the back, me driving down the Uxbridge Road, just out there, to here, came down, I'd arranged to meet the manager, they went in, loved the club, called the Moist Hoist because of the condensation. And once we started playing there and the crowd started arriving, we had to put a tarpaulin above the stage to keep the drips from the bottle green paving lights upstairs on the pavement from dripping onto the drummer, Charlie Watts. So when Cyril and Alexis started the club really packed out every Saturday, Charlie was playing drums, I was singing, Alexis and Cyril had a fallout because Cyril Davis wanted to have a Chicago type harmonica band. So they fell out and they said, no, I want harmonica lead with the blues feel, and Alexis said, no, we've got to broaden our horizons, we want the sax and harmonica. They fell out and they said, right, we go our own ways. So Alexis Corner formed the Alexis Corner Blues Incorporated 2, and Cyril Davis formed the Cyril Davis All-Stars. So Charlie Watts and I were out of a job. So there was a changeover period of a few months. So I said, what are you going to do now, Charlie? He said, I don't know, what are you going to do? So I said, I think I'll form the Artwood combo again, because they used to have band called the Combo with a lot of brass and all that. I said, what do you think you'll do? So he said, well, I've had an offer to join the interval band. So I said, oh, right. And they were the Rolling Stones, because they used to come down here and play 20 minutes in between the Blues Incorporated sets. So he said, they've asked me to join. So he said, I'll give it a try. And now look, millions of years later, he made the wrong decision, in my opinion, but he's doing all right. Upstairs, I'll take you up there to show you where these paving lights used to be, that the condensation was dripping down all night long. That's why it was called the Moist Voice. The people used to come from miles around. Paul Jones, Long John Baldry, everybody used to come down here just to sing with this beautiful Blues Incorporated band. Influenced a lot of people, and they went on to form their own bands and become superstars overnight, nearly. This is where the paving was. Here. That's where the bottle green paving lights used to be, but now it's all been cemented over. This is the Goldhawk Road. It runs between Chiswick and Shepherd's Bush-ish. And Ronnie's first band, the Birds, used to play in a club in the Goldhawk Road. It was something like the Zambezi. There was a couple of those clubs like that. And he had the band. He had this band called the Thunderbirds. But Chris Farlow also had the Chris Farlow and the Thunderbirds. So Ronnie had to drop the thunder because Chris Farlow stole his thunder, and that's what I say to Ronnie, and it makes him. I made Chris Farlow laugh as well. So they called themselves the Birds. But then the American Birds came over, and at Heathrow Airport, the Birds, the British Birds manager, Leo, sued them at Heathrow Airport and said, we've already got an established band here called the Birds. You can't come over bringing your American band called the Birds. But they said, we've got a Y in our name. And so they got away with it by changing it to the Y, and the Birds just carried on being the Birds. But they got the front page of the Melody Maker for suing the American Birds at Heathrow Airport. So that was Ronnie's Birds' first major publicity, front page of the Melody Maker. Well, still the Goldhawk Road. This is the Goldhawk Club. If you follow me to this alley, which is unfortunately covered in scaffolding at the moment, so you wouldn't recognise it. But this was the mecca of the mods. Well, here we are inside the Goldhawk Club, where Friday nights the mods from different areas of London used to meet and fight out their differences. And the Who was the resident band at the time, so you can imagine the havoc, not only on the stage but around the stage area, with all little fighting mod people. But it used to be a lot bigger in those days. That stage used to be right at the other end. That was Friday nights, but Saturdays, the girls used to come in because they had Saturday jobs and had a bit of money to spend, so that cooled down the atmosphere a bit, because instead of two groups of men fighting their mod battles, the girls sort of put a nice cooling effect on it. Hopefully, I read, and it made it a nice club then, except the Who were still going crazy and making the whole place jump. And the atmosphere was dynamic. I only came here twice, and now the mods have adopted the Artwoods because they liked our music. And Decca put a target on our first album called The Art Gallery. So I'm glad that they've adopted us instead of beating me up, because they're my friends now. But this is their birthplace in the Goldhawk Club.
So now we are moving away from the West End and leaving the fashion-obsessed mods to visit the stomping ground of a group which sang a song about fashion.
Now we're at the Clissold Arms, and it was a very handy drinking hole for the Kinks and Mick Avery, the drummer, because just across the road, the Davises used to live in that house there, but somebody's parked a red van in front of it. But can you imagine the rest of the house? You can see the top of it. But they used to come to this pub, but if this pub was closed or banned them for any reason, it was so handy because across the road there's another pub just round the corner called the Alexandra. There's the Alexandra, and now we're going to walk into the pub in the hope that Mick Avery's still here, nursing the same pint from 1968. So we go through this door, and we have a little look round. He should be here somewhere, lurking, since 1964. Ah, there he is. Hello, mate. Fancy seeing you here after all these years.
I haven't been here all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I had a little break. About 1970. Only because I was banned.
You've been banned from here, and now they're letting you back
We
in.
were banned, I think, for a while. And we used to use another pub.
But
This was our favourite one because it was only 3 yards from Rando's house. Yeah, we used to come in here, and as you see, got a little shrine for the Kinks, having been here before. And 1964 was my first visit here.
what brought you over to this neck of the woods then? Was it because of the band, or were you living in this area at that time?
No, it's because of the band. I went for a boring audition with
Did you?
several other people, and I met one of the other people recently that went for the audition.
Who was that?
Nerd in Play, and I thought Ray Bowman, and I thought no wonder I got the job. When I joined them, the Kinks had a record out called Long Tall Sally, which was like a R&B version of Long Tall Sally.
Yeah, I know that one.
And that's where I first met you, I think, that Ready Steady Go.
Yeah.
And you borrowed someone's trousers.
No, you were delivered a box of trousers from some outfitter. They wanted you
ended
to
up
wear
with
them on stage, and they didn't fit any of the Kinks, so they said, do you want them? They fit you. So I said yes, and I proudly went on stage with my band wearing a pair of Kinks trousers. That's my claim to fame.
Okay, can we have them back, please?
I think I sold them on the internet thing.
To the Hall of Fame.
If I'd known it was going to go on this long, I would have kept them, I tell you that.
Yeah, no one knew that in the old days.
Nobody knew.
When I was
Keep
sitting
going.
there, we used to play all the local places, the Athenaeum, and the Moravian Hall, and then we went. Our big break was going on tour with Dave Clark 5 and the Hollies.
Oh,
It was
right.
the biggest the launching thing we had.
On a tour, that was it?
On a big tour, UK tour. That was that sort of put us on the map as far as live work.
Yeah.
And then we had a record called Do You Still Want Me? That didn't make it. And then finally You Really Got Me. Ray and Dave come up with that, and it was all sailing ahead.
Excellent.
But Ray was turned into this prolific writer. I mean, I didn't know them from Adam. But it was just a freak of nature.
Yeah, and the music lives on, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It's brilliant the way
I
that.
thought I was going to just be in a van for about 6 months.
Everybody thought that, didn't they?
Yeah.
In those days, and just have a good little living for a couple of years, and now all this time after, we're still gigging.
Yeah. I thought, I'll have a couple of years of it, buy a castle, and get out.
And get out, yeah, get a proper job.
Yeah.
Now you
So,
know some other pubs in this area, or clubs, don't you?
well, the nearest one that everyone used to go to was Club's Clique.
Now, these are the stairs to the club at Club's Clique, but we had to carry a Hammond organ up. Us poor Artwoods, straining, and because it took 4 people, 1 on each corner, but there wasn't quite enough room for us all, so we brought it up on our fingertips to about this, and then we had to negotiate this tricky corner. And as you know, Hammond organs don't bend, so we had to stand it up on end, turn round with my massive arms and lug it up. So if John Lord and Derek Griffiths and Keith Hartley and Malcolm Paul are listening, they will remember our sweaty little days of humping the gear up into Club's Clique. We've got into Club's Clique, that used to be the stronghold of music venues in this area, and if you played at Club's Clique, it was in their display advertisement in the Melody Maker, and if you got your name on that display that you were playing here at Club's Clique, you thought you were becoming famous, because it was like being on the Markey or the 100 Club, and Club's Clique was a venue that all the bands were seeking to be good enough to play at. Up there was the bar area wasn't there. They used to have seats, rows of seats, just chairs here for the people who just wanted to come and look at the band. In front there was dancing area, do what you like. The stage was at that end without the air conditioning unit, lovely stage. Through there was a kitchen, which was our changing room as well, with 2 stainless steel sinks. And Georgie Fame, everybody used to change and get ready to come on stage. And the atmosphere is nearly exactly the same for me, but because I can't believe I'm here. That's it. End of story for that bit. No, what I mean is I never thought I'd be standing up in Club's Clique again. You know what I mean? Thought I'd be dead by now, by the way. Howlin' Wolf was playing here one night, and he was in that changing room, and he'd finished his set, and I said to him, because he was my idol, Howlin' Wolf, Smokestack Lightning and all that, and we were supporting him. We did our set, then we watched his set, and we had the same changing room, so I went in there afterwards, and I said, how do you find the audience in England? And he said, what do you mean? I treat them all the same. And he picked me up by my coat, like that. So I can say I've been picked up by Howlin' Wolf, and he shouted at me. And I said, oh, sorry, Mr. Wolf, I was only asking a question, howling. Then I scampered off. And that was my meeting with a blues legend in that room. Just next door, there was Decca Recording Studios. And when they had a big act like Howlin' Wolf or anybody here, they used to run the cables through, the recording cables from the studios into here,
and got it all set up to record live shows on this very area here. So there's a bit of history you didn't know before. Just next door from Clute's Cleek is the Decca Studios, and Mick's going to tell you a little story about the studios.
Well, back then, they had a really perceptive A&R man at Decca Studios. As Brian Epstein came with the Beatles and wanted to get them a recording contract. And I said, no, Mr. Epstein, you've got a perfectly good business in Liverpool. Just stick to that. Guitar bands are out. He gave them the big elbow, and so they didn't get a contract there. But they did go on to be quite famous, I believe. Also, in their favour, Brian Paul and the Tremolos, they got the contract over the Beatles. So they really knew what they were doing in those days. But they did have some success, having said that. And I now work with Chip Hawkes of the Tremolos, that took over from Brian Paul. So we're keeping the music going. There's a lot of la-la songs, that's the only thing.
But anyway, it was good news for the Tremolos and Brian Paul when they got this vacant recording contract after the Beatles were told to go to Liverpool.
And I thought, we must be better than the Beatles.
Yeah,
Why
I bet.
aren't we as famous as them?
I bet
and
they-
as rich as them?
I bet that made their day.
Yeah, only that day though.
Now take a look at that bridge and you see nothing moving. I wonder why.
This is Putney Bridge. It's the most busy bridge in London. People come from miles around to sit here in a traffic jam. And it's also the start of the boat race between Oxford and Cambridge, famed for that as well. Now here we are at the Half Moon, Putney. Most of the famous bands of the 60s played here. So if you come with me, I'll show you through into the club room, okay? You got it. This is it. That is the magnificent setting for many a great band from the 60s. Well, here we are on the stage of the Half Moon, Putney, the famous stage. In the early days, it was a folky blues club with Sonny Terry, Brownie McGee, and Arthur Crudup, who wrote "That's All Right, Mama." Elvis Presley recorded it and gave it as a gift to his mother. Later, it was invaded by the mods and the rhythm and blues weldings, such as The Who, The Cream, Pink Floyd, the Artwoods, you name it, Jimi Hendrix probably. As I remember it, this is the same as I recall, same sort of area. I don't know if the bar was in the same place, but the stage might have been this way a bit, but it's still got the same sort of atmosphere as I remember. But it was so packed out, and we didn't have all these lights then, we only had a couple, and we played it twice, and it's still got the same atmosphere, exactly. Even now, you can imagine it when it's vibrating with bands, although it's not as big as I remembered, because it's quite small if you have a look around, but such a lovely atmospheric club, I would say.
Now we're going east and getting closer to central London.
Big city, where I get all my kicks. Big city, with its high-flying chicks. Big city, where I spend all my bread. Big city, just a pain in the head. Won't you please let me make my way back home? Big city, you're as mean as a snake. Big city, got no heart, just a fate. I'm helpless, like a man in a trance. Big city, give me just one more chance and I'll never.
Right in the heart of Soho now, and I'm trapped between my nurse and her friend.
I've got a woman that I've been longing to see. She won't wait.
Soho Square was built in 1691. It was a very fashionable place until everybody discovered it, and then they moved west. Yeah, this is a lovely statue of Charles II. He's got a bra around his face, which proves he's in the centre of Soho. And just opposite Soho Square, we've got the MPL, which is dedicated to, well, Paul McCartney has come a long way from the Cavern. Now he's got a whole building dedicated to his publishing business, the MPL, right opposite Soho Square.
We're now going to be moving around Soho and first we're calling at a pub at Frith Street, which runs directly off Soho Square.
Now welcome to the world famous Ronnie Scott's Club. Musicians from all over the world, great jazz musicians played here. But just opposite Ronnie Scott's, there's Mozart's house. Mozart lived there. Get jazz musicians from all over the world to pass through these doors. Ronnie Scott's reputation spread like wildfire, and everybody, all the great American jazz musicians were really over the moon if they got invited to play at Ronnie Scott's, because that was a great accolade for them, and everybody tried to get here. And it's still going now, attracting worldwide musicians.
We're now going to nip out of Soho and we are moving on down Frith Street. Then we come to Shaftesbury Avenue.
Right, we've just crossed over from Shaftesbury Avenue to Gerrard Street, which is the centre of Chinatown, well known for its beautiful restaurants. Right, we've just crossed over from Charing Cross Road, famous for its bookshops, foils, etc. And we're now in Great Newport Street, home of Ken Collier's original jazz club. Ken Collier was such a purist. He joined the Merchant Navy and went to New Orleans to study jazz, and came back and opened this world famous Studio 51, Ken Collier Club, which was a great lead into the rhythm and blues from traditional jazz, because the Stones played here as a residency. The Artwoods played here for the all-nighters. It was one of the first clubs to have jazz in the evening and R&B all through the night.
Continuing up Charing Cross Road is another street, which was and is central to the London music scene from way back.
Now we're in the famous Denmark Street, London's Tin Pan Alley. Goes back to Victorian times, where there's loads of sheet music shops. Every shop down here was to do with music. And we've got famous recording studios, and next door used to be Southern Music, where in the basement the Artwoods recorded their first ever album. And it was from here that I met Donovan and walked down this road into Wardour Street to introduce him to Bob Dylan at the top of a folk club above a pub in Wardour Street. And that was the first time they ever met, Dylan and Donovan. Donovan was hungry and nervous, he said, at meeting Dylan for the first time. So we stopped at a hot dog stand and he brought a hot dog. But as he was walking down the road, the sausage jumped out of the roll into the gutter. And I said, "Oh, you want to get another one?" He said, "No." And he picked it up and put it back in his roll and carried on eating as if nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, the world meeting between Dylan and Donovan happened, just after that hot dog incident. It was in basements like these that the Rolling Stones recorded their first album. And whilst in the basement at number 20, Jimi Hendrix cut recordings of some of his best material. David Bowie famously lived in a converted ambulance parked on the curb in Denmark Street outside the hip Gioconda Cafe. This used to be the famous Gioconda Cafe, where once we finished recording, all the musicians used to meet in there and exchange little stories, and sometimes musicians were in there looking for work, saying, "Have you got any gigs?" and things like that, and exchange phone numbers. And over the road, there's a pub, used to be called the George, it might still be the George, where I first met Jimi Hendrix. They couldn't have smashed the George down.
I'm going to take you back up Old Compton Street to a little cafe bar with a lot of history.
Now we're in front of the world famous Two Eyes coffee bar, and all the early rock and rollers, they say this is the birthplace of British rock and roll, because Larry Parnes, the manager, named all his stable names like Fury, Wild, Steel, and they all played here, the early skiffle, right into rock and roll. And I think Cliff Richard played here, but definitely Tommy Steele made his first impact on the public in the Two Eyes, just there.
We're now moving into Wardour Street, which was once the home of a very special club.
Markey was first located at 165 Oxford Street. The Rolling Stones played their first ever gig in July 1962, and bands like the Yardbirds, the Animals, Eric Clapton were regulars. And then in 1964, the venue was relocated to its most famous location in Soho at 90 Wardour Street, which became a legend in the history of pop and rock music. The club was the most important venue for the emerging British scene and witnessed the birth and rise of some of the most important artists in the 60s and 70s. We were down at the Markey rehearsing, and the Yardbirds were auditioning. The Yardbirds were auditioning for a new guitarist, and I saw this lonely figure sitting on the side of the stage, and I said, "Are you all right, mate?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What are you here for?" So he said, "I'm auditioning for the Yardbirds." So I said, "Oh, you'll be all right." I said, "Just do your best and just hope for the best." And then later on, I found out he was Jeff Beck, so he did get the job. Just off Wardour Street, we've got Trident Studios, and that's where Lou Reed, Elton John, David Bowie recorded, and also the Beatles recorded a couple of tracks here rather than Abbey Road, because these had an 8-track rather than a 4-track sound system.
Now let's go to the most westerly part of Soho, home of the 60s fashion scene.
We're in Carnaby Street with my very good friend Gina. And Gina is the owner of the Eel Pie Club in Twickenham.
Hello.
Gina's going to give us a little talk about what it was like in a fashionable shopping centre for a young rock chick.
Well, this was the place to come, wasn't it? This is where you wanted to come if you wanted to get all that good rock and roll gear. And also, if you were a mod, it was a haven for mods.
That's right. Yeah.
In fact, the Small Faces, I understand, spent £12,000 on clothes down in this Carnaby Street.
Did they?
And they thought it was actually coming out of their promoters' pockets, but in the end, when they got paid, they found out it came out of their pockets.
Oh, so they deducted it. Oh.
Which they weren't very pleased about.
They wouldn't have spent that much if they'd known. Still serves them right for being greedy.
Didn't you once play down here, Art?
Yeah, we played in the shop window there. It used to be a man's fashion shop, but it's called Lord John. Here we are, the London Palladium. Quite a few little stories go on behind these doors, linking the rock and roll era. Tommy Steele, for instance, is there now, the first rock and roller that we've just been talking about down the Two Eyes coffee bar. And the Beatles played the Royal Climb performance, and John Lennon said, people at the back clap, and the people in front rattle your jewellery. The Stones played here, and they had a revolving stage at the end of the show where all the performers came on. But the Stones were the first band ever to say, no, we're not getting on that revolving stage. We've played our songs, we're off home now, which was a great little step for them to take in those days, because everybody was glued to Sunday night at the London Palladium on their television sets.
And now let's turn back into Oxford Street and go back to number 100 Oxford Street.
Here we are, the fantastic 100 Club, where the Artwoods had a residency for 2 years. And I would like to show you inside, because this place is steeped in musical history. All the greats have played here. Everybody you could ever think of in the jazz scene. You've just got to look around at some of the posters. This has got loads of fond memories for me, and we've been given kind permission to film this snippet for your benefit. But kind permission of my friend, the owner, Jeff Horton. Jeff?
Good to see you again.
Great to see you
And
after
mate, yeah.
all these months.
I know, yeah. It's a while since you played it now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when your dad was my boss down here,
Yep.
we used to have a residency for about 2 years, every Tuesday night.
Yep.
And we were the last ones out, chatting, and he used to come out of his office and say, come on, you Artwoods, and that's gone down in history now. Everybody said, come on, you Artwoods.
He always knew it was a late night when you were around, that's for certain, yeah, when you were in town, yeah.
Oh, it was excellent. They were brilliant days. It's such
Yeah.
Great.
Because it's funny, because my dad always was considered to be a jazz man, which he was, I mean, I think first and foremost.
Yeah, because my brother Ted, you know, he used
Yeah,
to
of
play,
course, yeah.
he used to know Roger before
That's
I
right.
did, really.
But very few people realise that it was my dad that actually started to move jazz away from here when he took over in, I think it was 1964, and he started using booking new guys.
That's
and
right.
The Kinks, and I think he booked the Stones in a
Yeah.
few times. Brian Knight as well. He
Blues
booked
by
in.
Six.
And
I
he
remember.
actually turned it from a sort of jazz club, which it always was, to a more sort of R&B and sort
Yeah.
of blues scene.
Yeah, when the R&B blues boom,
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
but that we crept in. We all loved trad anyway, and we used to play the intervals to a lot of trad bands until these sort of bands got so popular that they took over, and the trad still carried on, but in their own clubs.
Yeah.
And we just had our nights down here
Yeah,
as
yeah.
R&B.
That's right.
So it mingled very well, because a lot of my friends are trad musicians.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, that's right. And I remember, obviously, Chris Barber.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, he used to
Yeah.
play it, and if it wasn't for Chris, I think probably a lot of the blues guys that played
That's right.
from the States, I doubt if anyone would ever have seen him over here,
No,
'cause Chris
he-
brought them all over.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, even Muddy Waters, I think.
I think he did, yeah. In fact, I think he put Muddy Waters in here in the early 60s. I'm sure he's played here as well.
And that was such an influence on all the other up-and-coming musicians. So he was right there at the beginning, wasn't he?
Absolutely,
Chris
yeah.
Barber.
Yeah, he was, yeah. Top man,
Excellent
definitely.
band. And Pat Hawcock's my mate,
Yeah.
trumpeter.
Yep.
All the
And
band.
Pat still go. Have you seen Pat recently?
About 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
I saw him last year. Pat, he's still well, looks
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And he's been
Yeah,
there.
he's a real gentleman there.
Yeah, lovely. And
Excellent.
50 years is it now? They've been on the road together.
I
Chris
should
and Pat?
imagine so, yeah, because I used to see him at the White Hart, Southall, when Lonnie Donegan was on banjo. That was
right,
before
yeah.
Donegan went into the skiffle
Yeah.
bit, just part of the Barber band.
Yeah.
I used to go there from art school every Wednesday to the Albemarle Club and see them. Then all these millions of years later, we're still talking about him.
I know.
Excellent band.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And they've all played here as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you only got to look around. Anybody's played here.
Yeah, there's a lot of history in these walls, definitely. And it still hasn't changed. It's still at 100 Oxford Street, which is good.
I know.
For how much longer, though, it's hard to say. But
Is it? Why is that? then?
well, you know, it's just becoming harder and harder to be totally independent. I mean, we've had actually quite a bit of publicity recently. We've had 1 or 2 radio shows and TV things about us. And it's only since we had that publicity that people realise we are totally independent. Everyone always assumed that we were part of the Main Fiddler group or the Mackenzie group. It's only now people realise that we're actually a family business.
Yeah.
A little cottage industry on Oxford Street. I think the reason for the club's longevity is probably because we've not really been tied down into one particular genre of music. We've talked about how it's gone from a jazz to a blues club and the R&B scene in the 60s, and then that went on obviously, and we used to do Radio London shows where the 3 Degrees and people like that had come in and have a kind of sort of disco type
Yeah,
thing, where they'd like mime to records. And then the punk thing, of course, happened in the 70s. And then in the 80s, there was the big African thing that we used to do. We did a lot of African jazz.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an interview on the BBC with the promoter called Julian Bahula, who said that when he was running the Friday nights down here, it was all run by ANC members, and eventually when Mandela was released, they all went back to South Africa, and he granted them an audience, and he thanked them all for the 100 Club Friday nights he'd heard about while he was in Nick on Robben Island. Yeah. So you kind of realise when you hear stories like that actually it's probably much bigger than you realise when you're in the inner sanctum the whole time. But going back to what I was saying, that's just an example of the amount of different things we've done. We've had gospel choirs in here, and I think that's what's kept the club going. We haven't just stuck to like rock music or jazz, and we still do a bit of jazz, and we still do a bit of everything. I think that's probably...
We were down here with Sister Rosetta Tharpe and
That's right,
Little
I remember.
Walter,
Yeah.
Howling Wolf,
Yeah.
you name it.
I mean, I wish I'd been there for those nights. I mean, I've seen some pretty memorable nights myself, but my dad's often, you know, talked about those nights with
Excellent.
all those blues guys here.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had, and it's funny, it's almost turned first circle. It was like one of the most memorable nights I ever remember here was having the White Stripes. And when you listen to them, that was 3 years ago, it's the first ever they did in London, and listen to them, it's like listening to Robert Johnson, these people all over again. I mean, it's just like the whole blues thing come full circle.
Yeah.
And even bands like Oasis, they're like really influenced by a lot of the music that you guys made. I mean, you listen to Knowles, and all these biggest influences are all guys from your era.
Yeah, I know.
And they've played here as well, so that was another really memorable night.
Mind you, we did have a good band. That's why
You had a fantastic
That's
band.
why your dad allowed us to play here.
And I've got your album, which is called 100 Oxford Street.
That's
isn't it?
right.
I've got
They
it, yeah.
re-released was called. The
Yeah.
first one was Art Gallery, then it was
Second one was-
re-released
yeah.
100 Oxford
But I
Street.
think Art Gallery, you've got to pay about 300 quid for that now, haven't you?
If you've got one.
If you've
I've
got one,
only
yeah.
got one, and that's not even in mint condition.
won't retire
I didn't
on
know
that
it was going to go on this long. You know what I mean?
We are leaving the 100 Club and going on to a link with one of the groups that played here. Pink Floyd went to college just around the corner at Upper Regent Street.
Here I am sitting on the steps of another college. I didn't attend this college, but it was attended by Pink Floyd. It was London's first polytechnic, or probably the first polytechnic in the world, but now it's changed its name to the University of Westminster. And just a stone's throw away down the road is the BBC Broadcasting House, which is going to be our next visit. Right, the BBC Broadcasting House, built in 1932. In those days, there wasn't too many programmes for music, and also censorship played a big part in it. For instance, they banned the Stones' Let's Spend the Night Together and Puff the Magic Dragon, and also the Beatles' I'm a Walrus, because it contained the word knickers. There's only a few hours a week dedicated to the type of music that everybody was craving, and like it or loathe it, BBC were controlled in a lot of ways from the output of this type of programme until pirate radio came along. But then it was difficult to receive because it was either stationed in mainland Europe or in neutral waters from a ship around the UK. When pirate radio became so popular, the BBC soon cottoned on and then dedicated whole programmes to popular music.
We are now going down Regent Street and turning off to the right to Savile Row.
Well, here we are in Savile Row, and it's not only famous for all its tailoring outlets, also Sheridan, as well as being Member of Parliament, was one of the greatest playwrights lived here. This used to be the Apple Studio, where the Beatles did their last live concert on the rooftops. And a lot of people regard that as the end of an era, because shortly after Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix and Morrison died, people thought that was the end of a great musical era, but the music lived on.
Yeah! More! Woo!
Well, I'm an all-night worker. Baby fits me to a T. Well, I'm an all-night worker.